Good evening. This is the Plymouth Charter Commission meeting in the Great Hall in Plymouth on August 22nd. We'll start tonight's meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Two of our members tonight are out of town, so we have a quorum and a complement to proceed. I thought because time is getting short and we're getting to close to delivering our preliminary draft, that tonight I suggest that we all have seen the Collins number 11 memorandum, which was circulated prior to the weekend. Together with the items that were discussed in that memo, there were some 9 items. So rather than take up specifically the memorandum, I thought we would make better progress if we start moving now through the charter. And when we come to an item that was in that number 11, I'll note it. We can stop and discuss it further if we need to. But basically, they were responding to our desires of the last meeting, when we asked them to concentrate on certain items and develop some language and also give us some advice. So when I get to those items tonight, if it happens, then we will certainly discuss them. I'll mention which ones those are, and we can proceed. So we've got 3 meetings scheduled this week. I'm not sure whether we're going to need Thursday night's meeting or not, but I propose that we go through the charter now page by page. Nobody should feel rushed, but we need to progress forward so that we will complete this by next week. I would like to present the preliminary draft of the charter to the Old Colony to be published a week from Wednesday. It's 2 weeks before the publication date. So if you give it to them a week from Wednesday, it'll be published 2 weeks later, which is the time when we will be sending it to Boston to the Attorney General's office and to HUD. So welcome the Collins team tonight. We thank you for being here and participating. And let's start with the draft that's marked August 22nd. Now this draft, as far as I can tell, as far as I know, it has every change we have discussed and approved in here, redlined, so you can see the language. It has some changes that haven't been fully debated yet, but it was anticipated that they will be approved. But of course, if they're not, the charter will be revised accordingly. So I suggest that we move forward with the charter, and you're welcome to spend as much time on an item as you want, but we're going to have to finish the charter in about approximately 7 or 8 days. So page 1 of the charter. This is the draft that was just passed out tonight with the red lines, and this includes changes based on the last memorandum that we got from Collins, which was number 11, as well as all previous changes, memoranda, and minutes. So we start with the preamble. You see a lot of redlining there on the first page. Anybody have any further comments? This originated with a David Peck draft. It's been amended and edited a few times since then.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would like to add to the enumerated to number 1, where the paragraph ends in appreciation of our natural environment.
Yes.
Adding the phrase, including the rights of nature.
Very good, Dave. You found a place.
Yeah, we've
Good.
actually found 2, but I think that it belongs in the preamble.
So it's a natural environment, including the rights of nature. Any discussion?
Where is it going exactly?
This is in the at the end of number 1. I want to sort of reinforce respect for the environment.
What are the words we're adding, David?
Including the rights of nature.
Okay, so that's a comma.
Any objection?
No.
Okay.
I have something I'd like to add there as well. I'd like to
Betsy, I
take
can't
out
hear
the word appreciation and put in the word protection. Including the rights of nature. So
Anything else on page 1?
Appreciation? Mike? There is an implication in including the rights of nature protection. As soon as you say including the rights of nature, you're talking about very baseline protection where anyone can speak on
Should
behalf.
it say something like including the protection of the rights of nature?
Yeah, it could be including the protections provided by the rights of nature.
That's getting kind of wordy.
I just think the word protection is a stronger word than appreciation.
Frank, why don't you suggest where the word protection should go? Including protection of the rights of nature? Or including the rights?
You could say respectful harmony, comma, protection and appreciation for our natural environment, including the rights of nature.
Okay, one more time slowly, please. Respectful harmony,
Comma, protection,
protection and appreciation of our natural environment.
including the rights of nature.
Okay, got it.
I really think the word appreciation is so vague that the word protection is much stronger. I don't think if we, but I think if we have the word protection, we don't need the word appreciation. We just don't want to make it too long and wordy, but this is my opinion.
Oh,
Are we
Sure.
okay with Frank's wording?
sure, I can see that, what she's saying. Why have appreciation if you put protection in?
So give it again, Frank.
Well, I'll just say, I put that sort of paralleling harmony, so I guess I would like to still keep it, but add the word respectful harmony, comma, protection and appreciation of our natural environment, including so that modification Frank just suggested.
So the wording would say natural harmony, comma, protection, natural harmony with, comma, protection and appreciation of our natural environment, including the rights of nature.
Okay, it's sort of balancing the word harmony, so.
Okay. Michelle, you got that okay?
No, I did not get that. I'm all over the place.
It doesn't work anymore.
Anything on the next page, which is chapter 1, starting with sections 1-1-1. We didn't have any changes as we previously dealt with it.
Sorry?
Section 6, definitions.
I wanted to, I'm sorry, I wanted to add something to number 2 on the preamble. One of the things that's become common usage is the notion of two kinds of infrastructure, gray and green infrastructure. Gray infrastructure being pipes, roads, culverts, but green infrastructure being trees, wetlands, those things that mitigate, the natural forces. So I wanted to say to provide the gray and green infrastructure necessary to support an exceptional quality of life of its citizens.
Frank, what's the change you're proposing?
On number 2, where it says to provide an infrastructure to support an exceptional quality of life of its citizens, I wanted to say to provide the gray and green infrastructure necessary to support an exceptional quality of life for its citizens.
Well, you're talking infrastructure, though.
Well, what I'm saying is that infrastructure is widely understood now to be both gray and green infrastructure. As a matter of fact, green infrastructure far more beneficial because it costs much less.
Okay, I just think one takes into account all the stuff you're talking about. One talks about the green, and 2 talks about the actual hard infrastructure. I think you're getting repetitive, but that's just me.
Okay, Frank, one more time, let's hear the wording and see what we can do with it. It says to provide an infrastructure.
Right, and I said to provide the gray and green infrastructure necessary.
What's the word? I'm having trouble. To provide
Gray?
what? Gray?
Gray and green infrastructure.
G-R-A-Y?
G-R-A-Y. Gray infrastructure, pipes, culverts, green infrastructure, woods, wetlands, those things that
Do you really
mitigate.
think we need that? I mean, it's infrastructure to
Well, that's what
support an
I'm saying,
exceptional
there's a,
quality of life.
there's a new way of looking at
I've never
infrastructure.
heard of a gray infrastructure.
What, gray versus green infrastructure? Yeah, it's common,
But aren't we talking about that in definitions?
Any other,
well, that's just a suggestion, it doesn't seem to be.
No, I think we've covered it in number one.
yeah,
And
Okay.
then number two is pipes, buildings, everything that's hard, and number three is democracy. So
Okay.
they're kind of broad chapters.
Alrighty,
so we basically got changes just to the second item.
We could
Right.
add forests after bridges and parks, if that would that help, Frank? You did not necessarily, okay. Fair.
All right, so we're on next to the
okay, next.
next couple of pages. So Collins, you need to, you're going to have the abbreviations, the definition section to be looked at?
Mr. Chairman, we have reviewed it. We have one or two very small suggestions which we can send to you this week. One involves clarifying the definition of days, just to make it easier, and one involves adding a few words to select person, I think it was, to clarify that it's a person currently on the select board. I think
Your
those
mic-
were the.
Hey, Mike, we can't hear you.
Mike, we can't hear you.
Oh. How about now? Yes? No?
Very faint. I'm turning up the volume.
How about, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what's going on. We have a couple very small changes that we can send over this week to definitions. One is to clarify the days to make it simpler, and one is on select person to ensure that it refers to someone currently on the select board. But I think that was all we had. We'll send it over this week.
Highlight that we're still waiting for a definition of annual town meeting.
right. So, Mike, you'll send those definitions over this week, including the annual town meeting? Yes,
Yeah, you gave a thumbs up.
thank you. Okay, moving along, next, page, there's a continuation of definitions. We added the word town officer. Then we come to chapter 2. In chapter 2, the first paragraph is 2-1-1, which is the precinct advisory committee. Has been any change in that since we put it in several weeks back? Section 2 is composition, membership, and eligibility. And we made changes to this as we went along in terms of town clerk, what the town clerk's keeping, mailing address, email, et cetera. I don't think there's anything controversial here. This is the wording that's been in the draft now for months. The video recording, timestamps, and so forth. Any changes or questions on section 2?
Overall, you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, we've deferred the final vote on how many town meeting members?
Yes,
Okay, so that's a deferred,
that's still an open item.
yeah, okay.
Larry Pizer is supposed to be back here tomorrow. It was a 4-4 vote, so the motion didn't pass, but Larry was the one person we need to hear from.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chairman, on what I have listed as 284 is probably changed. Just had a question. The text is, following the raising of a point of order at any town meeting, a motion to appeal the ruling on such point of order shall be allowed by the moderator and shall be decided by a 2/3 vote of town meeting.
That's right.
I just had a question. I might have missed that
Before you-
meeting.
Page you on,
What
Frank?
section is this from?
Well, I have 284.
Yeah, we're still back on 2-2,
Oh, I thought you said anything in 2.
the paragraph, section 2.
Oh, okay, sorry.
We'll get to that, that's a few pages further down. So we've been dealing with right now is 2-2,
Ma'am, I have no other questions.
and then we come to 2-3, which is the powers. Okay. Let's see, the 2-4-1 had to do with, we added a paragraph about the additional town meeting in January. The number of town meeting members, wherever that appears here, is still the subject of a further vote. Section I think, Michelle, we got a little issue with respect, Section 4 is procedures. Any changes with Section 4 procedures? These were all town meeting procedures. We haven't made changes in this section in several weeks. And then we come to Section 5, attendance of representative town meeting members. Section 6, caucuses.
Michelle, Bill Cohen is looking for the password and stuff.
Section 7,
Just send me a
before we get to Section 7, there is a change in Section 6 that was discussed in the Collins memorandum, number 11. And this was the points that were raised by Pat McCarthy in terms of getting things done in June. The precinct chairs has to be organized before they can appoint finance committee members, so there appeared to be a bit of a timing issue. So 264, the change that was suggested here is that the precinct chairs would organize within 14 days following the town election, and that would give them time to be in place to make the appointments of the finance committee to take effect on June 30th. So that was the suggested fix of the point raised by Pat McCarthy. Precinct 7 is the Committee of Precinct Chairs.
Mr. Chairman, in 264, this is a question for COPC. Do they routinely just have a chairperson and a clerk, or do they also have a vice chair?
Yes, they do.
They have a vice chair?
Yes, they do.
Then we should add a vice chairman to 264.
Okay,
Look at you.
I've got to look at three. We have so many versions. I've got notes in each version, so it's.
Vice Chair to Precinct, Committee of Precinct Chairs, got it, 264. There have been no further changes for several weeks in Section 7, which is the Committee of Precinct Chairs. The one item that's been added here was a reference to them conducting a event to present the candidates for moderator. If you look on,
Are you talking about 273, Bill?
I'm just looking for where we put it. It's Section 7, Committee of Precinct Chairs. Let's see. These are all the various duties of the committee that we discussed. Betsy, did you find the reference we're
Yeah,
looking for?
273 on page 19.
273?
I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I think we should talk about
Yeah, that's it,
273. It says the committee chair will present the recommendations of the committee of precinct chairs to town meeting. I'm thinking it might be beneficial for clarity to put another sentence that says, following the recommendation of the Finance Committee.
Committee of Precinct Chairs is taking up stuff that FinCom is not.
It doesn't say that. It says, "The committee shall make recommendations to town meeting on all warrant articles that it deems to be non-financial in nature."
Right. So FinCom wouldn't be going over those.
No, it just says that the committee deems non-financial in nature, but it doesn't say that the Finance Committee agrees that it's non-financial in nature, you
Right.
see? So I'm just thinking only about the protocol. So I'm the moderator, the finance person gets up and, chairman gets up and says, on Article number 19, the committee voted blah, blah, blah. And then the Committee of Precinct Chairs chairman gets up and she says, this is the Committee of Precinct Chairs recommendation on Article 19. Are you saying only precinct chairs will make on the non-financial?
Right.
And
Yes, that was the
never-
whole, that was the whole point of
Okay,
that,
so-
that whole thing, that Committee of Precinct Chairs would, non-financial stuff, it's their bailiwick, for lack of a better term. So if, under your scenario, Article 19, FinCom would not be presenting at all.
So when does the Committee of Precinct Chairs and the FinCom get together to agree which ones are financial in nature and which ones are not?
Good question.
Because it says that it deems to be non-financial. That means the committee, that refers back to the committee.
Betsy, which item are you talking about? Are you suggesting a change?
273.
Betsy's point is, I think we discussed it, I can't remember where we put it. Betsy's point is, who deems what's financial and what's not financial, and when is that
We did
deemed?
discuss it,
Okay,
and it was thought that the chair, the two chairs would get together and they'd work it out among themselves, which would not be difficult. And if
okay, does it say
And
anywhere?
in fact, if for some reason they don't reach agreement and they're absolutely at loggerheads, presumably they each can present it.
Okay, Betsy's point is, where does it say that in our charter?
It doesn't, it just says that.
Okay,
We discussed it, Presley, but we didn't think we needed to write all
So
the,
maybe a sentence that says
Procedure
the
in
chairman of the Committee of Precinct Chairs and the chairman of the Finance Committee will meet. I'm just saying we need some maybe sort of direction for the
I think,
protocol.
Betsy, when we talked about it, we thought that if both committees think they want to present it, and because one thinks it's non-financial, the other thinks whatever, they each can present it if they want to, but among themselves, they ought to be able to work it out.
Okay, very good, thank you.
There is, I know there's a sentence in the charter, we'll come to it, that says that the Committee of Precinct Chairs are going to present the candidates for moderator at an appropriate event. It's in here.
Thank you.
We'll come to it. So going through section 7, which is the Committee of Precinct Chairs and all its stipulated duties, we continue along with the section 8, which is the moderator. This is one of two legal issues that has already been presented to our council, is whether the town meeting can elect the moderator under state statute. We'll have an answer to that soon. But the whole process is laid out here in section 8. In the little language, it says Collins to draft language saying that COPC will vet candidates for moderator. That's already in the charter. So we'll see it. And Frank, I think this is now when we come to your item.
Yes, the 284.
284.
Right. I remember the initial impetus for this change when I looked at it, going over the, charter revisions and thinking about all the appeals that happen, points of order. To have a 2/3 vote seems like there would really be cumbersome in terms of the time of town meeting.
This, the history here, this provision is actually put in the charter by the Charter Review Committee that David Peck was on and reported in 2018, and we went back and forth on whether it should be a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. And at the time, I remember the discussion was that it was, the moderator was resisting it strenuously, but we decided to have a 2/3 hurdle.
Oh, so this this exists in the present charter?
Yes.
Oh, because I had it highlighted, so maybe that was incorrect on my part, so never
So
mind.
It's been in the charter, and to my knowledge, it's only been invoked
Yeah,
once or twice.
okay. I just thought, gee, that would be cumbersome, but I guess it's proven to be workable,
Right.
although I'm not sure it was utilized
I
that
think
often.
the thinking was, as we were phasing it in, it would be better to phase it in with a higher bar than just a simple majority vote. Right?
Thank you.
Okay, so we can continue on and complete the moderator section. Section 9, compulsory attendance. Section 10, filling of vacancies and town meeting members. All these sections have some edits that we did weeks and months ago, and they're now in here and highlighted in red.
So in 291, Mr. Chairman, I have a particular issue because given the status of town meeting, meaning virtual, and the possibility of it being virtual, I haven't been able to attend the town meeting in the last few times because I didn't get an invitation. I asked for an invitation, I didn't get an invitation. Just the, I think, chair and vice chair of the planning board. So I was unable to attend except watching on PAC TV. So I'm not sure there's any remedy to that, given that, that little anomaly in the case, but I definitely would like to be able to attend, and I think all elected board members should be able to attend town meeting.
So which-
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah, this was brought up multiple times when the whole virtual thing was brought up, and the answer was that they only have a limited number of panelists. So they couldn't bring every chair of every meeting in. That's why you couldn't as
Yeah.
vice chair of the, and I had requested last town meeting, I said that the department heads should be available because I was told that they all made a video and that should be good enough. And that is, I see your concern, and that's the answer I was given when I brought that exact concern up during the discussion, that they couldn't have as many panelists as they wanted. And then FinCom strengthened their muscles and said they won't come if they're not all allowed to come. So that was one less person that could be on it.
Maybe the way to deal with this, because I've always thought this referred to department heads and chair people of appointed boards, but we could add elected boards so that, you know, the school committee and the elected planning board could be added to this paragraph so they get invitations to the town meeting. But again, I'd always thought the purpose was all the sort of representatives from various town departments and offices to be able to answer questions.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
Which they always did when we were in person.
Right.
They were all there.
well, they're even there virtually. But I think to address Frank's thing, if we added elected boards, you know, or specifically mention the school committee and planning board, but if we say elected boards, you'd also get the housing authority and you'd get the other people who are elected, redevelopment, I think. I mean, we have a few other elected people.
A school committee is automatically a panelist, I think, isn't it?
I don't,
Right now, isn't,
I don't see them designated.
no.
I don't think it
but I
would hurt.
that-
The chairs.
Yeah, the
Okay.
chair is typically there.
Dave Alagoody?
I think we should be pushing for in-person town meetings and overruling the moderator, because you can include all the people you want. If there are not enough links or enough technology to include all these people, it's ridiculous to put it in the charter.
Well, and I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't
I
disagree.
agree with you, but I think that I would like to see, I've always encouraged my fellow town meeting members to, why not ask the planning board if some warrant comes up that has something to do with the planning board, or why not ask the Board of Appeals, or why not ask these people? And I think the more we put in the charter that these people should be available to answer questions, the better. My 2 cents.
Okay, so the question is, the section in the charter lists those that must be there. The question is whether we want to add to that must list. Of course, anybody can be there. At the last virtual town meeting, I thought, wasn't the practice that many of the department heads are in this room and available?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of learning to virtual town meetings as we went along, but do we want to make any change in 2-9-1, which says chairpersons of boards, commissions, and the finance committee, and department heads?
In a sense, it says they shall have all the privileges of representative town meeting members. So one of the privileges is to have
Privileges is to be
a,
present, but they can't
is
vote.
to be present,
It
yeah.
says except for
So
the power to vote.
actually, they're already given the power to attend the town meeting with all the privileges except voting. So that includes, I would think, having an opportunity to be I mean, I don't think town meeting members are considered panelists, are we? They bring us in, right?
The technology is that when you when you raise your hand and
Right.
speak, you're brought in as a panelist.
Right.
There's certain panelists who are automatically there all the time. So, and FinCom made a demand last time that they wouldn't support a virtual town meeting if all of FinCom was not a panelist, so.
But couldn't they just bring in the department heads anytime we have a question for a department head, the way they bring in a town meeting member?
Could, but I think, personally, I would like to put a little stronger language that says these people must be, you know, I think Frank's point of you know, elected boards or something like that would make it, I think that the purpose of this is to say to the moderator or whoever's forming town meeting that we would like to have more availability of our.
So you're talking about every member of the planning board?
Yes.
Yeah.
And every member
you
of
know,
zoning?
So let's just, wrestling, do you have a specific suggestion to 29-1?
I kind of like David's suggestion of elected boards, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Heads of elected boards,
Say that again?
chairpersons of the whole board.
Elected boards, period.
So you're saying they,
You know, the shall is in my head, but if you just added the words chairpersons of elected and appointed boards, you would cover each of the boards, because this is mandatory, or at least shall is mandatory, and other members of the planning board or school committee may not feel like being ordered to go to town meeting. But I think having the chairperson of each of, so if you added the words chairpersons of elected and appointed boards,
Got it.
you'd have everybody represented with the shall. And then it's up to your chairman to, you know, Frank may attend, but, you know, then you're not ordered to attend.
yeah, this is the compulsory.
Yeah, this is
Paragraph.
compulsory.
Well, you know, the planning board is considered executive board of the town, you know, and we've gone through the language about that. They should be there. I would like shall to be there to the executive boards of the town.
I would suggest that I think we should at least say the chairman of these boards should be there. I would support chairman as opposed to the entire board.
So we got chairpersons of elected and appointed boards. That's it. Okay. Moving ahead.
But he may come. He's not excluded. He's not-
Ready to proceed? Section 11, conflict of interest, we voted that the other night, and it's exactly the way it was voted now in the charter, 211-1. Section 12 is the advisory, or it's just now called the Finance Committee. All this language we worked out back in the spring. Which brings us over to a new section, Section 13, which is the warrant article Oversight Committee. A brand-new section. This is in the last form that we discussed and approved when we were going through the Collins memoranda that discussed this.
So on, Mr. Chairman, on 313.3, compliance with master plan.
Right, we're not into chapter 3 yet.
Oh, I'm 313.
We're still in chapter 2.
Okay.
It's section 2-13, which is the warrant article Oversight Committee. Okay, that's the last chapter, last section in chapter 2. Anything else in chapter 2? David?
Mr. Chairman, I had in the past wondered whether in 213-4, having 3 different reports, 60 days, 180 days, and 300 days, seemed like excessive workload. So in the past, I wondered if having it 180 days and 300, just 2 reports rather than 3 made sense. But I just want to see what.
Okay, what's the feeling of the commission? What dates do you want to preserve?
Well, I'm proposing just dropping out the 60-day one.
So the first report wouldn't be until 180 days?
Yes, because it takes a long time for some things to evolve, and the 60 just puts a workload where not much will have happened within 60 days. So I was just proposing to save a little workload and drop out. So the first report would be 180, and
Got
the
it.
second report would be
Any
300.
objection to David's change? Okay. We got it, David, thank you.
I agree with that because we also have the town manager having to include something as well in the last paragraph, so I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the change in 213-4 is to delete the first report. 60 days out, the first report now would be 180 days.
Yes, and thank you.
Very good. Anything else in chapter 2? Okay, on to chapter 3, which is the executive branch, select board, town manager, and planning board. Okay, the first long section in chapter 3 is the new setup for the selection of the select board. 7 members, 5 at large. This was the language we actually reviewed at our meeting a couple of meetings ago. It has not changed. And the next section is 32-1, which is the general powers and duties of the select board. You've seen this language. It's been in here quite a while about what are their duties and what should they be doing and not doing day-to-day stuff and so forth. That's 3-2-1. Three two completes, it indicates how often they're meeting with other boards and who's calling the meetings and so forth. Remember, we spent a lot of time on that language in 3-2 through 3-2-8. Section 3, appointments. The one change, there were changes we made here about the acting town manager and temporary town manager. Nothing new there. And then we come to the town manager powers and duties.
Mr. Chairman, if we could go back to 3-2-5,
Okay,
and this was a note I'd written to myself about the select board shall have the power to approve bargaining and may designate one select person to participate in the agreements. I wrote to myself, should that be changed to shall, so that we have the select board present as opposed to may?
you know, it's interesting, David, again, that one was a topic of the last charter review committee. I remember we went back and forth between may and shall.
Yeah, so I'm putting it out again, that,
Right.
we can leave it as it is, because that's, I think the select board's been doing that, but
I think, Scott, did you have an opinion on that one? Remember, I think you
I
were
think,
part
I
of
think
that
it
debate.
leaves the negotiating of the collective bargaining agreements is usually primarily done through the town manager's office with town council. The town manager takes care of the different parts of the negotiations, at which time it's presented to the Board of Selectmen. I know there was some sticking points in the past where information wasn't being passed along appropriately to the Board of Selectmen, and they had chosen to have a representative at the collective bargaining. I believe one member for each group or something like that. They split it up, and it worked well. But I don't know if we really want to tie their hands as far as, if things are working well with the town manager and they don't need the intervention of the select board. I think May is a more appropriate.
okay, I'm okay with that.
I think that's kind of where we came out the last time.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask it one last time as we move through.
Right. Thank you. Section 3, appointments. And here's where the paragraph about town council was inserted in 3-3-1. It was referred to in the last Collins memo, but the language has not changed. It was agreed about a month ago that it would say not less than every 3 years, the select board shall review the appointment of outside independent legal counsel and/or the employment of one or more attorneys on staff at a duly noticed public meeting where the review is clearly noticed on the meeting agenda. The review process shall include at a minimum an opportunity for public comment. And that's the paragraph that was added. Section 4 deals with the town manager appointment and removal. One question I have for the commission is, now that the select board is 7 members, should we keep the number at 4, or should we increase it to a higher number as far as quantum of vote in appointing of?
I would say move it to 5.
Yeah, I would
5?
agree. Yeah, I would agree with 5.
So we're now, if states 4, it would become 5. Good. Everybody okay with that?
It's page 32 of the new document, 3-4-1.
I think the question is, is that the consensus that we stick with a supermajority, or, because in the last charter review, I think, David, we had a discussion of whether a simple majority or supermajority was the appropriate.
So 5 out of 7 would be sort of similar to 4 out of 5, as best we could make it. It would still be, it's because of the math, but I mean, it's still a higher number. Better than 4.
I was always a simple majority fan, but that's just me.
Then you recall, we had the paragraph on the the temporary town manager. This is all in section 4. The town manager powers and duties in section 5. Michelle has regrouped them, or organized them, but not changed the substance of them.
Excuse me, Bill, where do we have the majority or super majority for removing the town manager? Where is that in here?
That's 3-4-3, so it's
Okay,
a,
there we go. Okay, so is that also?
yeah, which we need to change also to 5.
Okay. Sorry, it wasn't mine.
Yeah, it's the next page over.
Okay, I got it.
So
Thank you.
in these town manager provisions, you recall we went through the Plymouth town manager's suggested edits, and by and large, most of them have been made. Let's see, the 3 departments which he thought we should not be tying his hands in terms of reorganization, we still have all of the language for the DPW, Planning Department, and the Finance Department, but there's a paragraph at the end of each of them that was suggested by the Collins team in their memorandum number 11, which states basically that notwithstanding that language, the town manager is still has the power and the ability to reorganize departments if he sees fit, which gives him that flexibility that he was looking for.
I just want to be sure Michelle picked up that changing from 4 to 5. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Cohen has been having difficulty getting on. He is now William Abbott on the screen, and he had his hand up for a while. So,
Bill Cohen is that.
I don't know.
Bill Cohen.
I'm here, not there.
Cohen.
Right.
Keohan.
Is Bill Cohan up there?
That's him, William Abbott.
How do you know it's him?
There he is.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Bill.
Hi, how are you? Sorry about that, I was having a little trouble, technical trouble, but I'm here. was
Bill, I
just
can't
following
hear you. You got to speak louder.
I was just having a little bit of technical trouble, but I'm here. I just wanted to make myself known to the commission. The one thing that I did know, you were talking about how you were going to handle did you need a supermajority, a simple majority? Was there any, how did
We're
the?
changing the number from 4 to 5. So it would take 5 votes of the select board instead of
Okay.
4.
All right. Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's see, the other change that was made here was the qualifications. As we decided at our last meeting, we would use a standard clause for all of the department heads that they had to be fit for experience. You know, the phrase that's in here now is to each of them. Let's find one for an example.
No, I'm, you know, if you
Shall
look
be
at
especially
3-6-1 for the DPW, the
Right.
phrase is, especially by education, training, and experience to perform the duties of the office. So
Right.
that became the formulaic sentence for each of the leadership. Yeah.
Should be especially, should say fitted by education, training, and experience to perform the duties of this office. And that applied to the Director of Planning, Finance Director, and DPW Director, and also Board of Health members.
Well, on page 37, the word fitted isn't there after the Department of Public Works. Can you see that? Shall be, no, weren't we just talking about Department of, yeah. So the word fitted should be in there because
Right.
it is in there for the Director of Finance.
Yeah, there's a typo. The word fitted should be in each of the places
Right, yeah,
that
so the
that
word
clause
fitted
appears.
isn't there on 3-6-1. Especially fitted.
Right, so Michelle, when you went over this afternoon, you did reorder the lettered, numbered items? Were you able to do that? The A, B, C, D, and so forth?
Yes,
Okay, good.
has to be looked at again though.
351, yep,
Yes, 3 by 1 has to be.
perfect, thank you.
Did we have those same words under hiring a town manager?
Betsy, did you have a question? Okay. All right, Board of Health, Section 7, says members of the Board of Health shall be especially fitted by education, training, and experience to perform the duties of the office. Was that the wish of the commission that it apply to all of them? We discussed that at the last meeting, that we needed credentials for the Board of Health. So we used the same phrase, but had it apply here to all the members.
Section 7.
Is it worth, Mr. Chairman, also talking about who appoints? Because in a past Collins, highlighted thing, they said perhaps the town manager rather than the select board
Points who?
would appoint conservation. But right now,
Yeah, that was a question I'm glad you brought up, Dave. That's why I put it in, because I think we wanted to discuss it and make a decision. I think you have a choice
Page 43.
okay.
as to who appoints the Conservation Commission.
Is there any state law about that? I'm asking whoever might know.
I
Is
mean,
there a
as
state
I remember,
law?
the Collins team was telling us that in many cases, it's appointed by the town manager.
Yeah, I looked at the state law, Betsy, and it says the town manager or the city manager shall appoint, or the select board.
So the
But-
question
But the
is,
first list in the language is for the town manager or city manager.
so currently, this says the select board makes those appointments. Do we want to change that to the town manager?
I guess I would make that proposal for discussion purposes.
So let's discuss David's proposal to make the town manager the appointing authority for the Conservation Commission. One more thing I'll point out, the new appointments advisory board, advisory committee is in this draft of the charter. We just haven't come to it yet. But that was also referred to in this latest Collins memorandum, that there would be a screening committee to collect resumes and find qualified people to serve, including the Conservation Commission. Betsy?
So I'm just wondering if we're splitting hairs in that the town manager works directly for the select board, and he's not going to probably appoint somebody that the select board wouldn't want, wouldn't be happy with. I
Well-
don't know.
I don't know.
You could put
it-
and/or the town manager.
No, that confuses it. Another variation is if it's 7 members, have 4 by the select board and 3 by the planning board. And so you have 2 elected boards appointing individuals, appropriately credentialed and experienced individuals.
But would that meet state law, the planning board?
We might have to ask counsel on that.
You get some hands up there.
I see it. Is that Libby? Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
But this is Pat. And I just wanted to point out that I don't think it was the Collins Center that suggested the town manager do the appointing. I think it was one of the commission members. The default in the statute is that the town manager appoints with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. That's the default. Many towns have gone to just having the Board of Selectmen do the appointing, and that's what is happening in the town of Plymouth right now. So I do think you would probably need a legal opinion if the town manager alone can appoint the Conservation Commission, because I'm not aware of any that do right now without the approval of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you. David, does that change your view?
I think we're in discussion mode still here. I'm reacting to, the recent political history, and is that, certainly experience and credentials are important. Our appointment committee will deal with that, but the idea of spreading the responsibility around seems attractive to me if we can do it. And so either the language could be as as she just explained, which is the town manager with the approval of the select board, or I would propose 4 by the select board and 3 by the planning board.
So Pat, do you see any flexibility in who can actually make the appointments? Or you think we're bound by the statute?
I think that there is some flexibility. I just have not seen that done that way. So I'm not sure how much flexibility the Attorney General's office would consider appropriate. That's just not something, in general, it has been either the town manager with the approval of the select board, or the select board takes that responsibility directly without the town manager. And I just wanted to point out that this would be one of the boards that there would be advisory input for under the residents, under the Appointments Advisory Committee. So it would be more than just the select board alone looking at who would be doing who would be appointing the Conservation Commission.
So I guess the question is whether we rely on that appointments process, or whether we seek a legal opinion as to whether or not we can have the appointing authority something other than simply the select board or the town manager with the approval of the select board.
Billy's trying to get everybody's attention.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if anybody here has a discussion.
Go ahead, Bill.
Bill, go ahead.
You're muted.
Bill Cohen? We don't hear you.
Bill, you're muted.
Bill, you're muted. Bill.
Muting, there we go. No, I think we need to allow the Board of Selectmen to choose these members of these committees and boards. Obviously, we've set up an entity that will process resumes and applications to the board and recommendations. I think that I feel comfortable with that level of input, but still allowing the Board of Selectmen elected by the people to come to their conclusions when it comes to reviewing resumes to serve on these committees and boards. I'm satisfied with the fact that we are setting up this new entity that will be working with the selectmen, the select board and the town manager processing resumes and applications. So I would leave it as the appointment. The final say would be the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Mr.
Other opinions?
Mr. Chairman, I think the idea that David Peck brought up appeals to me, but I think as Bill says, with the addition of a kind of advisory committee to select people that are most appropriate, and I also think that the town manager appointing, I would not be in favor of that, because that's somebody that's not, could do this without being in open session and such. I wouldn't like to see those appointments made by someone without having to be scrutinized publicly by the public. So if we can't do the split, which may not be in order, I would definitely favor the new committee and the select board doing it in public view.
All right. Other points of view? I think with Frank on this, I do think that the select board should retain the power, but with this new appointments board, there would be some control on it.
Would you want to do it with the statute saying town manager with final approval by the select board? Or just keep it with the select board?
I think to put the town manager in there, now we've got 2 levels of recommendations to the select board. I think it's enough just to have the select board working with the appointments board. I think we're just adding another layer by adding the town manager.
Okay.
So then
It was worth discussing.
thank you. Then we discussed the various different departments and the edits we've already made. Public Works, Finance, Board of Health, Conservation Commission, just dealt with that, Board of Appeals. And we come to the Planning Department. And the long section we added on the master plan. I have a question on the master plan, and I guess it's a question for the Collins team. And there was a question raised at one of our meetings of whether there was an implementation plan. And I went back and looked at my notes, and one of the Collins folks said that the implementation plan is part of the master plan. But I went through our charter to see if there was any specific reference to having to have a master plan, implementation plan. I couldn't find any. So are we content simply to know that implementation has to be part of the master plan, or do we want to specifically refer to an implementation plan? It was either Pat or Libby who made
I'm
that
sorry.
comment.
The implementation plan is part of the statute.
Part of the master plan?
The implementation plan needs to be part of the master plan under the statute.
So it's part of the master plan as specified under the statute.
Correct.
Okay, well, 3-12-4 is the section we've added, compliance with the master plan. It's been added most recently. And this is the way we voted it weeks ago. Then we come to the planning board, and there's still out there a question about whether we can have an associate member with full voting powers. Council has that question, and they're going to be giving us their opinion. Then there follows the 3 committees, the building committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I had some questions about 313.3, compliance with the master plan.
Yep.
I think we're there, aren't we?
That's 3-12-4.
Well, I have it under here as 313.3. Which would
The
be,
numbering changed, but it's in the
Yeah.
charter now as 3-12-4. It was 313.
yeah, I guess it would be 313.4. 312.4?
No, the new numbering, Frank, is 3-12-4 on page 42.
It is? No, this is, let me see, is that right? Any proposed change or addition?
What-
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, 312.4, sorry to back up. I had concerns that, we talk about the town manager versus the select board and, who has the authority there, and they're very distinct authorities, but my sense is that the planning board defers to the staff member, the director of planning. And I think it would be more proper for the elected board to be the top authority, like the select board is. And in some instances, that is reflected in the charter, and others it's not. And in this case, we refer to any proposed change will be presented to the director of planning and development. And it follows through this regulation, I believe. And I would like to substitute the planning board.
Wasn't he simply to make a determination whether it was consistent with the master plan?
Yes, but what I'm saying is that can be done then without any consultation with the planning board, without any review, and the planning board really would have no say in what's in compliance or
So
not.
how would you,
I would
fix
say
this?
that the person, because essentially the
Right.
director of planning and staff is our staff person, our top staff person, but our staff person. So it should be brought to us to see what's in compliance. Now, we could consult with him, but I wouldn't like to see us left out of the process. And to some degree that happens because the planning board and the way it's set up and the kind of reviews we do as defers to the director and the staff. And we're given things that are pretty much fully baked and asked to nibble on the edges. And this is one of those instances, I think, where the planning board with their mission, their portfolio of the long-range planning of the town should be given the authority to say what is in compliance and what is not in terms of the master plan.
Isn't that already at the end of the paragraph B?
Paragraph.
You know, the director's commentary shall be presented to the planning board, who shall vote to adopt, amend, or reject the commentary. So it, you know, it goes to the director first, but it does go to the planning board. At the end of paragraph B, at the top of page 43.
Yeah, the version I have is Director of Planning and Development, or the Director's designee shall issue commentary, which shall address whether the proposed action.
Yeah, but then it goes on to say that the commentary then should be presented to the planning board, which will vote to adopt, amend, or reject the commentary. Sorry.
Frank, it's at the top of page 43, the first paragraph that Bill Abbott is referring to.
So Frank, you see the last, there is a process, but and the commentary then is prepared by the planning director, but it's presented to the planning board.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have that in my latest version of this.
Okay, any other comments on the master plan?
Yes. Hello, hello?
Okay, Bill.
Okay, so I want to go back. Peg, you mentioned something about the master plan, and upon completion, there's this implementation requirement by the state. But I had suggested that we add some language where not only do we have to follow the implementation plan, have an implementation plan associated with our completed master plan, but action items and suggestions of actual articles that will be suggested that would make the master plan more likely. So I know we know that the new master plan process, Mass General Law, is requiring us to have an implementation plan. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes, although that was Libby that did say that.
Oh, Libby,
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute in time. The language is contained in the most recent memo, Memo 11.
Right. Okay, very good.
So it specifically refers to the town's own regulatory review. So it's in the statute. Whether or not you want to put it additionally in the charter is completely up to the committee, but it is required by the statute.
Right. So I was taking the Mass General statute just a little bit further, that we would have something in our charter that said upon completion of this master plan that we have to have in the implementation plan, the state requirement, that we have some suggested bylaw changes that would be supportive of the master plan. These aren't to be this suggestions. This is just to, upon completion of a master plan, we start pointing to the town in the direction of actually changing its bylaws to make that plan a reality. So obviously, do you see where I was getting, Libby?
So who would be responsible for drafting the suggested new bylaws? Is it the planning board?
No. So whoever is in charge of putting together the master plan, and they're required, Mass General Law has a description of how the master plan works. The master planning process will work. They have a requirement of an implementation plan, and I just want to add to, as we describe how one puts together a master plan, that at the end of this master planning process, there's suggestions that are part of the plan. So whoever's doing the master plan will have suggestions at the end of the plan of bylaws changes that would make that plan likely.
So to be honest, I'm just not following how that's different than what the statute is.
I'll work on the language. I'm sorry. I'll work on the language and suggest it. Wanted to
Currently.
add there that would point us in a direction.
Bill, I can't hear you.
Oh, see, sorry. I'll work on some language and provide it.
But I think the difference between what you're saying and what we currently have is this talks about articles and bylaws and the planning director kind of being the referee and deciding whether or not they are consistent with the master plan. What you're suggesting is that the planning department itself would sponsor articles and bylaws and zoning changes to bring the town zoning to become consistent with the master plan. It's kind of like who engages in the process, who starts it. And that we don't have in here yet, and maybe that's the kind of language we need.
Okay, all right, I'll fine tune that and bring that suggestion back at a later date, but I do want to see, we kind of moved ahead of where I was kind of back a little bit. I had my hand up for a little bit. When you were talking about the master planning process in the charter, I did have this material, this a couple of sentences I had put together and sent it over to Collins, but I'll resend it and we'll look at it later. We can move on. I just thought it would be
Department section.
helpful. back there,
So,
when we talked about the planning process, that we put some
Hear you if you're still talking.
in the planning process, that when we complete the planning process, that we will have some action items set on the table for someone to implement, you know?
So just the language of the statute says this element shall specify the process by which the municipality's regulatory structures shall be amended so as to be consistent with the master plan, right? So it's saying that as part of the implementation plan, you need to specify what bylaws, what regulatory structures need to be amended so that they can be consistent with your master plan. And then if you look also in the charter, there's a provision regarding the planning board making recommendations to town meeting about changes to applicable bylaws so that they can be consistent with your master plan. So it's actually in the statute and it's in the charter that the planning board has that responsibility as well.
All right, thank you.
Bill, it's a very small thing, but in C, with the sentence following B, it says planning board approvals. That's confusing because the approvals should be capitalized so that you realize it's a heading. So it's very small, but I don't know if everybody sees on page 43 in the middle of the page, the A should be capitalized, otherwise it's confusing. It's a small change.
Especially. Okay, Betsy, did you have a change?
Yeah, it's just where it says C, planning board approvals. It's a
C.
small a, and it should be a capital A, so that it designates it as a heading, like above you have town meeting warrant articles, all capitalized, okay? Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the 3-14?
We did.
And the various committees?
Yeah, I would just point out there, it was, minor updates to the open space language, which we submitted. Bill Cohen visited the Open Space Committee virtually, and they added a few words, but it has been supported by the Open Space Committee.
I think we got that in here, David.
Yeah, I just want to tell the fellow commissioners, and likewise,
These three committees all had some recent edits to them, and the new language is in here for each of them.
okay, well, because one of them I only sent to you this afternoon for the Building Committee.
And that one, I think we also.
We got in? Excellent.
That was the one with Jean Blanchard's
Right.
wording.
Yes.
That's
Thank
in
you.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's in there on page 45.
The Open Space Committee now says it reports directly to town meeting in the first line. I think that was one of the changes.
I would like to make a comment on
And to the-
3-13.
So this was a change just made in the last couple of days.
Going back.
Thank you.
And the Land Use and Acquisition Committee, this was the language that their committee gave us within the last couple of days as well.
I would like to
Yes,
add
Betsy.
something to 313. When I was the chairperson of the Open Space Committee, there was a document sent around to all the committees if any land tax title or Chapter 61 was going to be considered, every department, Department of Environmental Affairs, I remember we'd had a sign, and the Open Space Committee also was notified of any Chapter 1 notice of intent to sell, et cetera. So I would at least add the Open Space Committee to land, along with the Select Board and Open Space Committee. Because the Open Space Committee, looks at all and makes a recommendation on all these properties in the past, and that was helpful to the Open Space Committee to know what was happening. I would think the Planning Board would want to know. I would think the Division of Environmental Affairs would want to know. So maybe we need to add quite a few more people, I'm not sure, in groups, I don't know.
Bill, that used to be standard operating procedure. What has changed?
It has changed. I asked the chairman of the Open Space Committee, they don't
That
always.
used to be standard
Yeah.
procedure. Everybody was notified.
What happened was, new town manager, new assistant town manager, the assistant town manager would be appointed to do that document, and then they'd come in, a new assistant town manager, they wouldn't know about it. It's not a fait accompli. I mean, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it just gets dropped entirely, even while I was the chairman, and I was expecting it.
Betsy, excuse me, do you have some language change here in this
So
one?
I would say, along with the Select Board and the Open Space Committee,
Say what?
This is under the Land Use and Acquisition
it's the
Committee,
last
Bill?
sentence, the Land Use and Acquisition Committee,
Land Use and Acquisition Committee, okay?
along with the Select Board and the Open Space Committee, shall be sent direct notice of intent to sell for or to convert to another use any possible land tax.
Yeah, I would say, right after Land Use and Acquisition Committee, comma, Open Space Committee, along with the Select Board. So just add those couple words.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
David, where's the change that you're suggesting?
Just adding the Open Space Committee after Land Use and Acquisition Committee.
In what line?
It's at line 1127.
The very last sentence on
So read the Land Use
313.
and Acquisition Committee and Open Space Committee along with
Along
the...
with the
Yes,
Select Board.
yes. That's Betsy's suggestion.
And Bill Cohen has his hand up.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. So Betsy's right. In the past, different town managers handled the notice of Chapter 61 differently after they removed the Land Use and Acquisitions Committee about 10 years ago. And it had just kind of fallen into the town manager's office. The assistant town manager would get a Chapter 61, and then, like David Malaguti just indicated, the town manager's office would make sure that every department had got a copy of this Chapter 61. And now that the Land Use and Acquisition Commission is back in existence, and they've been operating now for 3 or 4 years, adding some language to clarify, to make sure that all departments get this and all in reference committees, I think you might want to just institutionalize what David says used to happen. It used to happen really well for a while there, from about the year 2000, when I first joined the Open Space Committee, through about the year 2010, it was operating consistently. There was a problem there when there was no Land Use and Acquisitions Committee. Some of these departments and some of these committees did not get notice of possible opportunities for the town. So we should have some language. I wouldn't confine it to just the selectmen in the Open Space Committee that land use will notify, but different departments should see an opportunity that's coming up, whether it's fire or police. They might use it for a fire station or a police station, some Chapter 61 that's become available to the town. So maybe rather than just saying selectmen in the Open Space Committee, you might want to institutionalize what David was saying, that all departments would get copies of this and everybody would get notice that this opportunity was out there. And so that might be one way of looking at it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would suggest we add the words "and all department heads."
after Open Space Committee? So it would read the Land Use and Acquisition Committee and Open Space Committee and all department heads.
Because
And
right
then along
now,
with the select board.
because right now, I'm sorry, can you, yeah, right now, the Community Preservation Committee treats all Chapter 61s as standing applications. Once a 61 hits the town of Plymouth on a piece of land, the CPC does not require an application to be filed from its normal application process. The 61 itself becomes the application, and we quickly take it up for consideration. So,
So the wording is for that sentence, the Land Use and Acquisition Committee and Open Space Committee and all department heads, along with the select board. Got it. Thank
Shall
you.
be sent direct notice
Yes.
of intent, yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
Okay, moving along the, and we had the other committees are listed here, ending with the building committee, the last one in chapter 3, section 3. Then we come to the town boards and officers. The next addition to the charter is section 4. This is the Appointments Advisory Committee on page 49. That's the wording that we looked at last meeting, and this was addressed, the language was provided by Collins in their memorandum number 11. And there it is as section 4-4-1. Okay with that? Very good.
Is this where it belongs? Should this,
Well, I mean, it seemed to
should this be, I mean, it's bundled under elected town boards and officers, and it's not an elected board.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe it should be at the end of the preceding section.
I would think so, just for consistency.
So David, you'd move it at the end of chapter 3?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Then the sections on nominations now provides for the nominating of candidates for town moderator, for nomination of candidates to district select board positions, and then other elected positions.
Bill, I would like to discuss Pat McCarthy's comments on the district select board members. She made an argument that, having been on the redistricting committee, she felt that that was going to be extremely difficult and cumbersome to have
Okay.
two select board members elected separately by district. So I just would like to address her concerns tonight.
Go ahead.
So I think that, I know, you know that I voted against that idea anyway, which was having, I think all 7 should be at large, but I didn't look at it from the point that she looked at it, of how difficult it was going to be to divide the town into 2 sections. And she said that she felt that it was going to be almost impossible, if I recall. I don't have her notes in front of me, but quite difficult. But David has an answer.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you can't get an nice, neat, but I got the new precinct map, so it's possible, but it's not it's not crystal clear is a nice, but you can have 9 precincts north, 9 south. But it occurred to me, in doing this, for more regional representation, it's easier to have 3 districts than 2. It's hard to do two, you're right, just because the way our district map does make it choppy, and it's miles, it's the forest that really complicates thing. Of course, it's not a lot of people there, but it affects that. But it is possible, but it's possible also with 3.
I would like to have us reconsider 7 at large for this particular charter, and then have future charter committees or review people take into the consideration maybe 3 districts, but I think that's a lot for the public to take in at this point, that we're going to have 7 select board and divide it up by 3 or 4 or 2. So I want to respectfully request that we revisit the idea of having 7 at large.
Okay.
Bill? You know my feeling, I don't have to reiterate it, but I will just because I'm stubborn.
Yeah, I think there were 3 opposed to the,
I think all selectmen should be at large, end of
Heard that.
story.
okay, any changes?
I guess what I'd say is, should we wait till we have a full commission, just like voting on where we are, whether it's 6 per precinct? I would like a full committee present to discuss that. I'm certainly open to
I agree
hearing
with
the
that.
arguments again.
Yeah, I
but
agree with
It should
that,
be
Dave.
all of us.
Billy's trying to say something.
Bill?
Oh, I'm just, no, I was just listening to, I did want to comment that, that I did note what David noted. One, the new precincts, the 18 of them, do divide up nicely with the 3, because it actually gives you a nicer regional effect, north, south, and west. The idea that that the working group that was assembled to come up with the 18 precincts experienced such a daunting task that this would not be possible. I was part of that working group, and the group worked really well together and came up with a map that did embrace the idea of voters having an easier time of voting and feeling as if they were more enfranchised in this process and how the precincts were lining up. But I do note that you could do 2, it's possible, or you could do 3, as David noted. But I'll wait. I agree with David. We should wait until we have a full complement of a board if we're going to reconsider it. Thank you.
Well, the question is whether the commission wants to revisit that issue which we voted. Do you want to have another vote on that same point? We had a vote, I think there were 3 opposed to it, and
I'm willing to reconsider it. Just like we're reconsidering the number of
Right.
members per precinct, it's worth taking a fresh look at.
Okay, we'll take
And
another
Pat
one.
McCarthy has been a very
That's also,
respected person.
say again?
Pat McCarthy has been a very respected and involved town
So-
meeting member and also precinct chair. So I think for us to take a good look at her question is a good one.
So we'll mark that for another revote, which is the composition of the select board with 5 at large and 2 regional. As soon as we get everybody here, we'll vote it. Let's see, it being 8:30, be time to have public comment. Mr. Hutchinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick on redistricting. I was on that committee as well. And one of the factors, of course, is 3,400 people per precinct. And that makes life complicated when you're trying to divide up geographies. The next re-precincting exercise in 10 years is going to be even more complicated. And I would just advise you to keep the selectmen at 5 and don't introduce gerrymandering to the town. That's my quick opinion on redistricting. On the master plan, I also had a comment. I think it's 43B Libby, that prescribes the chapters in the master plan. And, you know, when we last wrote a master plan, we didn't have that prescription in that law, but we do now. And so any master plans that have gotten created after, I think, 2006, maybe later, but that's what I'm remembering, have that implementation chapter prescribed in the law. So it's there. The other thing that I wanted to mention, though, was that we have village master plans, which have always had implementation plans in them. And I spoke before on this, and I just remind you that I would love to see you discuss this and formalize the existence of these village steering committees and their implementation plans in the charter. I think that would be useful. Also, coming up, I just got Memo 11 very late this afternoon, and so I wanted to mention a few things about the communications and community engagement department. I believe that communications with citizens is a basic obligation of government and an essential component of the democratic process. And it's essential to fostering transparency in government and taxpayer satisfaction. I think that an effective communications function in town would be should be an integral part of the success of every aspect of town governance in the 21st century. And Plymouth, if you take a look at the electronic communications and outreach in the current form of government, you'll understand that Plymouth has a long way to go. So I'd ask you, I should say the Collins folks have a proposed communications chapter, and I do too. And so I asked Michelle to distribute my version, and I assume that you folks have it in Memo 11. I'm not sure. But I would ask you to look at this with an eye on the creation of the director job, because it requires the confluence of knowledge of municipal governance, in particular the New England town, the IT and web technology fluency, and essentially marketing communications. So this is a rare person that the town has to hire. What?
Put your hand in front of the mic.
You want me to put my hand in front?
Sorry, your papers were hitting the mic. I'll turn off your microphone so I keep the papers away.
Sorry, Frank. So anyway, I think that Plymouth will need exceptional candidates for this position in order to create an appropriate department and to begin building a presence in the community for engagement and appreciation of communications. And I'll talk to Derek about my suggestions. And I'm happy to work with Mike and the Collins folks to craft the language to present to the town. So anyway, I also printed out my copies just so that you folks would have hard copy, and you can pick them up if you want to, and thank you for the time.
Is there any, Joe, could you wait at the mic for a minute? I have a question. Are there any comments for Mr. Hutchinson? Then I have a couple. Pardon me? So
One of the things I should mention is in this document, you'll see that the language for the actual charter piece of this is de minimis. I mean, and in fact, you know, I agreed with Mike and the Collins folks that it should be broad and that much of the functionality should be in bylaws or HR job descriptions. And so that's the way I wrote my version of this. I'm not sure how Mike and the Collins folks might have listed the bylaw and HR content that I was dealing with. We were both using the model charter, or the model city charter proposals that have been online, and so we, I think, came up with lots of the same, our ideas about how to do this align.
Yeah, that's my question. We have a draft of a charter provision already from the Collins team. I'm looking at yours here. It's not long, it's equally short, but it
Right.
seems to me we really need to meld them together in a charter-type provision.
Yes.
And then all the rest of this, which is, you know, more implementation, is it, perhaps this could be, maybe it should be in our transition chapter as something to be studied and implemented by the
Yes.
town manager.
Okay, so I agree. I think some of it should be in a transition section, simply because it's so new. I mean, I could work with the Collins folks on that, but by and large, I think much of it goes in a bylaw for communications and in HR job descriptions, which is, I think, what Derek wants, which is why I suggested that I'll go talk to him about this too.
So, Joe, I think what we need to do now, because we only have we have a week, we're going to be presenting our charter, is to take your language, take the Collins language, let's see if we can combine them into a coherent charter provision for our Chapter 7.
Okay. I'll
And
talk
then
to
also
Mike.
make reference to this in the transition.
Okay,
chapter.
and I'll talk to Mike about that. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for spending all this time on this. Appreciate it. Any other public comment, Michelle? Yes, hi. Yes, if you could just state your name and so forth.
Martha Votrain, League of Women Voters member, and currently a member of the Observer Corps for observing the Charter Commission. And I've been to a lot of your meetings and watched some on TV that I missed. And one of the meetings that I missed that I saw the day before yesterday, I think, was when you took your votes regarding changing to 7 select board members and changing to 2 being elected district-wise. And as I recall from the other day, both of the votes were 5 in favor of those changes and 4 not in favor. So I just wanted to point that out because you were talking about it just a little bit ago at this meeting. And I do remember thinking that they were big changes, and yet it wasn't a 6-3 vote like many of your other votes have been. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Michelle, do we have any others?
Bill, may I say something?
Yes.
I had some email back and forth with Ken Christofori. Remember, he sent us an email a while back, so I thanked him. And he sent me an email asking me, would I please tell the committee that he's amazed at how collegiate, I don't think that was his word, but how much cooperation is happening in our committee and how there's not a lot of rancor or, you know, I don't remember how he said it, but I'd have to find the email. But it was saying, you know, there's so much discord now among committees and within committees, and he was congratulating us for being, working well together.
Okay, thank you.
Bill,
David?
perhaps I should be more vociferous then.
Say again?
Perhaps I should be more vocal.
No, it's okay.
No.
Yeah,
Any other comment, David?
just coming back to the timing of approval of our final draft.
Right.
Because I would think that parallels the distribution of a draft minority report as well. So, I'm presuming at some point we finish going through the draft and we would take a vote when everybody's here to approve that final draft. And,
Yeah, I think the minority report is the one to actually do in November.
well, but we also want to have public distribution and comment on it. So, if the final vote sometime in early September, would that be the time that we actually vote on our final draft?
Yes. No,
Okay.
You'd be voting on the preliminary draft.
The preliminary draft, but
Right.
at that point. Well, I may, at that point, distribute a draft minority report,
Okay.
which, over
I mean,
time can
let's
also,
discuss this. We need to get the Attorney General's copy to him, to her, on the 16th of September, which is a Friday. We need to have it published in the newspaper prior to that date, which means it has to be in the Old Colony on the 14th of September. In order to make that publication, we need to get it to the Old Colony anywhere from 2 weeks, perhaps a little shorter than that, but not much. So I'm shooting to get it 2 weeks in advance of the 14th, which would be the 31st of August, which is a week from Wednesday. Because they're telling us they have to take 2 weeks to get it ready to be published. And we've been back and forth to them many times. They may be able to shave a couple days off it. David made entreaties, I guess, to the editor, but that's the best we're going to be able to do. Then then we wait for 4 weeks, up to 4 weeks, for the Attorney General to give us any changes or things that they're rejecting, requiring to be approved. We'll have a public hearing scheduled for October 3rd. By the November 16th, we need to present a final report to the board, to the select board. That is when the minority report is also due, as part of that presentation in November.
well, as the full commission has discussed, that should be a draft to get circulated for
That's fine.
comments,
Right.
and hopefully improvement. No, but I'm just trying to fit the timing of that into the master timing. Also, when will we hear from council about the questions that we've asked?
They're working on them. They know the timetable. And they're going to
Okay,
answer
good.
those first two
Yeah,
questions.
and then the revotes on the select board and the numbers from a precinct.
Yeah, we can have the revote, David, as soon as we have the commission.
Right.
Could be
So,
as soon as tomorrow night, if everybody can make the vote.
yeah, or
Larry
next
Kaiser
Monday.
will be here tomorrow night.
Yeah, no, I just want, I'm hoping to get the substantive, either reconsiderations or votes so that
Right, wrestling,
the body of it's ready.
you won't be here tomorrow night?
I have a meeting at 5:30, so hopefully, but it'll be tight.
I won't be
You're
here
gonna
tomorrow
be
night.
late. Scott's saying he won't be here, Bill.
Scott?
No, I have to be in Randolph tomorrow till 8.
Okay, well, it's going to be hard, if we want to have a 9-member commission voting. When can all 9 members be here?
Hopefully next Monday.
Next Monday, yeah.
Monday, the 29th.
I think that'd be
I
better.
could do
Scott,
Wednesday.
you here then?
We don't have one Wednesday.
Next Monday.
I mean, if we could meet Wednesday, we can't, huh? I will make an
We'll
effort to
shoot
do
for next Monday.
Thursday.
Hopefully, everybody will be here.
You can't do Thursday.
I would say next Monday is the next time.
Yes? Next Monday? Okay, good.
Right.
The provision regarding it's one of the vetting of candidates for moderator was supposed to be 5-5-2. It's just a single sentence, and it will be put in, and it would read that the COPC may provide a forum for all moderator candidates to present campaign platforms. Is that satisfactory? Being 5-5-2. No, it will be. It's to be added. But I just read the language. The language is okay? Yeah, again, this is in the first item in the Collins draft number 11 memo. Item number 1, 5-5-2. COPC may provide a forum for all moderator candidates.
We okay with the word may?
Yeah, it's not essential, it's may.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right. So I think we left off just before public comment with the Appointment Advisory Committee to be moved to Chapter 3 from Chapter 4. Does anybody have any other comments as we get near the end of the charter? Section 10 is the recall of select board members. You got to make it work for district selectmen as well as the at-large selectmen. And Chapter 7 is this new communications and public engagement paragraph, which we just talked about. What's in the charter currently was the recommendation from the Collins Center. It's pretty short. And then the last provision in the charter is the enforcement provision, which is now at the end in section 7 it'll actually become 8 when we -5-1. The end it'll be after the public engagement section. And we changed the 4 months to 2 months.
Are you on page 61 of the draft right now? Yes, okay. I have something to say about that.
And we also took out the language about making the report to the town manager and the select board. It would end with the town clerk. So that's what we decided to do in our last meeting.
So right now it says, shall forward the written complaint, the town clerk shall forward a copy to the town manager and the select board. And I had protested.
You got an older version. That's in-
Yeah,
in
so
the
this is
current-
this is August 22 version. I would like to strike the town manager and the select board
Okay.
and leave it with the town clerk.
Right. I think that was the consensus of the commission.
Yeah, the written complaint shall be filed with the town clerk within
Right.
2 months of the alleged violation period.
No, I
That's
think
what I
the commission
recommend.
decided it should not go to the town manager or the select board.
No, because then it becomes a public document
Right.
and public argument.
Is that the wish now of the commission? It ends with the town clerk. Rusty, go ahead.
Basically, what we're saying is if anybody goes against the charter, we're going to file something with the clerk, right?
Yeah, but it goes to the person who's having the complaint.
Right,
Yeah.
but the point of filing that with the clerk or filing this was to have some public record of something, so that if this person decided to run for an elected office, that would be part of the public record. It just seems like all we're saying is you can make a complaint and it'll be filed with the clerk and it'll disappear into ether.
Well, I mean, what's the wish of the commission? We
Well, let's
discussed-
use an example. Suppose a select board member interferes in a way that the charter says it shouldn't with a department head or a department person. There's going to be difference of opinion as to whether that person agrees that they have violated the charter. Some person thinks they might have, some person thinks they didn't. So the select board said no, member says, no, I didn't talk to that person, I did blah, blah, blah. You know, I talked to his wife, her wife, or her husband, or whatever. But, so I think that to get into a public debate, was it really a charter commission, a charter violation or not? We got to decide, is that what we're looking for? Are we looking to bring that select board members talking to or not talking to whoever into a public debate? And I think we need to decide that. Is that what we're trying to do?
I don't, if I may, I don't know if debate is the right word. It's being filed with.
But as soon as it's made public at a select board
It's-
meeting, it becomes part of a public debate. It'll be on,
Okay.
it'll be on Facebook.
No, well, there's ways of filing with the select board that it's not part of the agenda. I'm just saying, we're creating a charter, and this is the enforcement of the charter. And it's all left to an individual to say something. And I just think that that's kind of weak. But I bow to the commission.
Why don't we take a vote? I mean, right now, it says it's back and forth with the town clerk. Complaint goes to the town clerk, notifies the offender, offender files a response with the town clerk. Then the question is whether it's filed then with anyone else. That's the question. Russell, you think it probably should be? Betsy's on a contrary view. Let's decide how many think it should end with the town clerk and not go to the select board or the town manager. Betsy's one. So how many think it should, copies go to the town manager and the select board? One,
We have a hand up there.
In the middle of a vote, we can't.
subject to,
Point of order, you're in the middle.
go ahead. Yes, Collins?
So I wanted to make a point of order and just remind the commission that even when it is filed with the town clerk, that could trigger the public records. It does trigger the public records law. And depending on the nature of the complaint, it may be exempted by public record law. And that would be the case no matter what entity it was filed with, whether it was filed with the Board of Selectmen, whether it was filed jointly, whether it was filed with the town manager. It doesn't matter. The public record status isn't affected if it's only filed with the town clerk. So just to be clear, just filing it with the town clerk does not change the status of whether or not it's a public record. It would be evaluated under the public records law, and then you would look at the exemptions, and it would depend on the substance of the complaint as to whether it would fall into an exemption. So just to make that distinction for the commission is, broadening the scope of the filing doesn't necessarily make it a public record or not a public record. Some of this information is in memo 11, and you'll see that there's language regarding the public records law in memo 11. It might be paragraph D of the section addresses the public records issue. So that's in there if you choose to use that language. I think the only thing, to Ms. Hall's point, is that broadening the scope of the filing just means more people know about it, or know to ask that it's a public record, or know where that this occurred. So it's more of, I guess it's just informing more people or more entities. It has nothing to do with whether or not, it doesn't change the status of it being a public record or not.
Mr. Chairman,
Bill Cohan?
I'm sorry.
Bill, we can't hear you.
Libby, so when you notice, when this is put on record at the town clerk's office, and in section 11 of your memo, you go through the language that covers those events. So you're saying that that's the height of what you need to do. I mean, obviously, there's other departments we could notify, but by going through the clerk's office, you're triggering these events to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, and that is making sure that this information goes on record.
So it is a public record.
Right.
So it doesn't, you could have it go through the Board of Selectmen, you could have it go through the town manager's office. The town clerk is where things are typically filed, like notices, legal notices and things like that. So it seems to be a logical choice. And it's the one that was used, I believe that language is also used in Falmouth. So again, it's creating a record, it's providing a method of notifying the individual, the alleged person who's in violation, that someone noticed this and objected to it, and giving them an opportunity to reflect on their own behavior and saying, okay, yes, I was wrong, or no, I wasn't, and filing a response to that. So if the objective is to create notice to the person and give them an opportunity to respond and reflect on their behavior, and possibly, depending on the language of the complaint, have this public record, then filing it with the town clerk accomplishes that. If you want a broader distribution, if the idea is that people should be aware of this complaint and aware of the response, then extending that filing to the Board of Selectmen or the town manager accomplishes that. It just depends on what the goals are of the commission.
Yes.
I don't think the goal myself is to bring somebody to the public notice of that they didn't abide by or meet the charter's expectations. I think it's to keep the town following the charter as scrupulously as possible. I would hope there would be a way that there is broad notification of these instances, but the individual's left out. I don't think it matters who the individual is. I think it matters that the charter is not being followed or is being followed. So I'd love for it to be broadly distributed anonymously, and I wonder if that's possible in the language.
Broadly distributed anonymously, you say?
Yeah. Yeah, no, not individual, exactly, I mean, people can deduce what they want, but we do not want, it's not meant to castigate people, it's not meant to bring people up to be pilloried. It's meant to say it's important to follow the charter and to be, people to be able to bring that to the attention of the public at large is a good thing.
The way the language reads, Frank, a board itself could be the offender, not
Yes.
just an individual.
Yes. Well, there's a certain anonymity in being on a board or whatever. But again, individually, I'm sorry, Mr. Brewster wants to speak.
Yes, Wrestling.
I propose we
David.
continue to talk about this. Just, I want to study it. I want to test in my own mind, read our current draft charter and find 10 different things that can be violated, and what does that mean? Is this an individual, a department head not doing something? In which case, I would want things like an executive session, if you're talking, in terms of privacy, But if it's a department that's 2 days early or 2 days late doing something, but I want to figure out exactly what this means. So at this point, I wouldn't vote either for it or against it. I want to think about it. Because like Frank said, I want the charter enforced or have, publicity and the sort of visibility or daylight or whatever people say, about making sure it's being adhered to, but I don't want the personal recriminations possible so I want to look at it, because a lot of the charter is posting and timeframes and things, and you either do it or you don't. But then if there's if it goes just to the town clerk, and I'm an aspiring politician, I might want to go to the town clerk and say, has the DPW, have there been 10 complaints against the DPW for A, B, and C? Because that might give me a political thing to work on. So I still need to think this through. So this, conflict of interest, we've talked a lot about it, but exactly what charter enforcement and charter violation means, I need to do some more thinking.
Yes, wrestling.
Yeah, because I think the purpose is enforcement, but the ultimate purpose, I think to Frank's point, is we'd like to say you should follow the charter.
Deterrence.
And it's to me, I'd like to put something in here that says, look, you should follow the charter and this is why. And, it's the ultimate responsibility of all the people who are involved in the charter day to day to say, oh, geez, I screwed up here. I shouldn't have screwed up. And it's like, I don't want public recrimination, but I think there's a good point to Frank's thing. All right, the DPW, not to pick on the DPW had 12 complaints about going against the charter, or town meeting had 12 complaints that somebody went against the charter or conflict of interest or something. Then that's something that future commissions can look at and say, hey, we got a problem here. And I just think it's the ultimate goal should be not recrimination, but to show that there's a trend of going against the charter. And I agree with Mr. Peck that this probably should go on a Monday agenda when we have a full board.
Okay, this is the third item, then we'll put aside for the time being and revisit it.
Could we check right now, is everyone able to come to next Monday's meeting, as far as you know tonight?
What?
Could we check with the 8 of us who are here? Is everyone who's here tonight able to make next Monday's meeting? I'm able to. It looks
Who
like
can be at
everyone
the
is
next
able to.
Monday's meeting for
Scott, are you
sure?
able to make next Monday's meeting?
Who cannot be at
And
Monday's
Bill,
meeting?
can you make next Monday's meeting? Bill Cohen? Can you make the meeting?
I'm waiting for the chairman to make that, Betsy. I'm waiting for the chairman. I guess I was waiting for the chairman to clarify that.
So I guess everybody present tonight can be at Monday's meeting. I didn't hear what Bill said.
Correct, I can be there. I will be there.
Tomorrow night and Monday. Tomorrow night and Monday.
I don't think we can hear you, David.
Bill, when are you back?
I'll be here Monday. I
Okay.
just couldn't hear David Malaguti. You're away from your microphone.
We'll,
Sorry.
we'll see who's here tomorrow night. And then we'll,
I'll be here tomorrow night too, by Zoom.
okay. If
I
if
thought
we
we
have a
were
full
meeting
commission
Thursday
tomorrow
too,
night, we'll
though.
vote it.
We're not meeting Thursday?
Thursday's, not sure we're gonna have enough people.
Oh,
I can't,
okay.
I don't know for sure.
I can meet Thursday.
3 people said they won't be here.
So what will our agenda be for tomorrow night?
Yeah, well, tomorrow night we're gonna meet. We'll see how many people are here, and next Monday night, maybe even surer. In other words, Betsy, you should be here tomorrow night.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Yes.
to move to approve the minutes.
Yes, so just turning to that, wrestling. So we have the minutes of August 8th.
Motion to approve.
I think there's just a correction on page 1. Michelle, the August 8th minutes where you say the opening remarks from the chair that the preliminary draft has to be advertised in the newspaper, it should be published in the newspaper. Instead of advertised, in the next line, when it said the special counsel will be approved at the select board at their meeting on, should be August 16th, not September 16th.
Motion approved with the additions or
Any
corrections.
other changes to the August 8th minutes? Is Wrestling's motion seconded? All in favor of approval of the August 8th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We also have the August 10th minutes.
Motion to approve the August 10th minutes.
Is that
Second.
seconded? Any corrections to the August 10th minutes? All in favor of approving them? Okay. Yep. David Malaguti abstains. Both sets of minutes have been approved. The August 15th minutes are still under preparation. Is there any other old business? Any new business? Then a motion is in order to,
Motion to adjourn.
we are adjourned. Thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow night.